I just got done listening to a performance using as much power out of this instrument as I can get. The only thing that you didn't hear in that performance is a custom designed sound or edited sound and a custom designed rhythm. We will be getting to these custom designed rhythms and sounds on the next video. So this is Casio number 3 in the tutorial, and this is how do you set up the machine. And there's a lot to setting up this keyboard to do what I just did. Now there's a lot of things going on in this in that video. So from the very basic, I'm going to go from the very basic to everything that I set up in there. Now I started with a tone, and this is if you write this down as you go, well, don't write this down now. I'm going to take the camera and zoom in on the display when I show you how I set this up. I'm going to just go over it basically right now, and then we'll go into detail when I got the camera on the display and you can see what's happening on the display. So the way I picked out this setup was I started with a tone, and I picked the G category, and the G category is reed pipe, and I selected G025, which is a jazz clarinet. Then I went to the rhythm category, and I selected the B category, Jazz European, and I selected B003, Fast Big Band. So those are the two basic setups. You've learned how to do that in tutorials 1 and 2. So now I have my main voice picked out and I have my rhythm picked out. Next I'm going to do is add the layer. So I'm going to push the layer button once, go to the layer, and I went to, again, the G category and picked out baritone sax 1, which is G012. And that's my layer. Layer on, layer off. Layer on. So now we got number 3. So number 1 we picked out a tone, number 2 we picked out a rhythm, number 3 we added a layer. Now I'm going to turn layer off. Number 4 I added a split, and the split was chosen from the F category, the brass, and this is F015, trumpet and trombone. That's with accompaniment turned on. You're hearing all the accompaniment. I have turned accompaniment off to hear just the split. So there's my split left hand with the trumpet and trombone. You turn split off. Next, I added a harmonization to this to the right hand. With the harmonization, there's harmonization on, harmonize off. It's just got that clarinet, but when I put the harmonize on, it's putting a 4-part harmony in there and giving me that big band style. And you can play that with one finger too, as long as you have a chord. The harmonize does not work until you press a chord. So when the accompaniment is going, you're using the chords anyway. So harmonize might have been kind of confusing for everybody because you have to be playing a chord to get to harmonize. And again, I'll be going through that in detail later in this video when we zoom in on the screen. So that's number 4. So we got 1, we picked out our main tone. 2, we picked out our rhythm. 3, we picked out a layer. 4, we picked out a split. 5, I added a harmonize to it. I'm going to turn that off now. And with that all together, between changing rhythms, using the start, finish, start and endings, turning these on and off, I got all those different effects to happen. and then I used all the controls of the rhythm controller to make all those changes. So I'm going to start this, and I'm going to say what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So I'm going to start the synchro so I get my intro started at the right time. As soon as I push that first chord, the intro will take off, and then I'm going to go into a harmonized right hand. Chord change. Back to a chord change. And now, to make it more interesting, we use fill-ins. And to make it even more interesting, we use the fill-ins into the next variation, which is this one here. That's the variation. We have two. Back to the normal. So we use the fill, and then we go into the variation. Now, I'm going to turn the split on, and now I'm going to get this rhythm. In the left hand. So I'm going to be turning the auto harmonize off, layer on, now turn the split off. I'm going to go back down. So now the split's off. Left hand's just changing chords. Now I'm free to take a chord and go to the bender. So I can do my solo clarinet with the bender on now. And then in between, I actually use the intro and the endings as fills. So I built up a big chord. I'm going to turn layers back on, split on. And that's how I went through and played that, and that's how you keep from playing a very boring rhythm straight through a song. You use everything that this thing's got. So we used, from the very basic, we went number 1, we picked a tone. Number 2, we picked a rhythm. Number 3, we added a layer to the clarinet by adding the baritone sax. Number 4, we added a split with some trumpet and trombone. Then we added the harmonize to give the big band sound. And then we switched in between all the three using the fills and the rhythms. And that's how I did that performance at the beginning of the video. Now we're going to focus in on the screen, and I'm going to show you how I set that up, because we're going to be using the mixer function, which is the most powerful function on here. Now in Casio 1 and 2 tutorials, I showed you where all the controls are, so you won't see me touching buttons, but I will tell you what button I'm pushing, and then you'll see the display react. I don't have a camera that can actually focus on the display and show you the buttons at the same time. The lighting just doesn't work where I can get both. And here we are focused in on the screen. And I'm going to use my navigation buttons. Up, down, you can see it's changing rhythm to tone. So in the tone, I selected the G reed pipe and selected a 025. You can use the data dial to select your... I selected a G025 jazz clarinet. So there's my basic tone. And remember, in Casio tutorials 1 and 2, we've done all this. So make sure you see those first before you go to this one, or you're going to be lost. Then I went over to my rhythm category. I selected B and used the data dial, and I found a 03 fast big band. And I'm going to start that. There's the rhythm, and here's the accompaniment. Stop. So now we got the basics. We have our tone selected and we have a rhythm selected. Then I went to the layer button and I pushed it once. And as you see, the tone is now changed to a baritone sax. But you'll notice the parentheses are still bold. So I'm going to my navigation buttons here. That's the the exit, the enter, and those arrow buttons. Pushing the up arrow to get my tone, and then I selected again. I selected the G category, and you can use the data dial to get to your choice. And it was a 012 baritone sax. So now we have the sax, baritone sax, layered over the jazz clarinet. You turn off the layer, you see your first, turn on the layer, and remember, the screen is telling you when layers are turned on and when splits are turned on, and really what's going on. So my original is the jazz clarinet. Layered is now jazz clarinet with a baritone sax over the top. Okay, so we have a split set up, a layer set up. I'm going to turn that off so that the display will display my split. And when I press split, you'll find that that's where I picked out my tone F015. That's the F category, brass, under the tone section, and 015. I scrolled to find a appropriate split. So now my split on my left hand is now the trumpet and trombone. And during that performance, I was turning the split on and off. I was turning layers on and off to get all types of different sounds out of this keyboard. So when you turn split off, the only thing it's going to do is run the accompaniment chords. Now I turn split on. Now I'm adding that split. With the split off, you can't add those. So with the split on, I have those. They're split on. I'm adding the trumpet and trombone to everything else. Like I said, I've been turning during that performance. I turned everything on and off. So now I'm going to turn split off. Take us back to our normal display where it's showing our first layered tone, our basic tone, the jazz clarinet, and our rhythm, the big, fast, big band. Now, when I did the split, first of all, I have to select where I want the keyboard to split. And by holding down the split key and not releasing it, and pressing the key on the keyboard, which I picked the G below middle C, you saw that on the display, we got the split. So that was part of the setup. Now the other part of the setup was selecting an octave range for that split. So this is why this setup is very complicated, because there's a lot of things to set up before we even get there. So now, to set up that, I'm going to take the layer button, but instead of just pushing the layer button like we've been, and I'm going to turn split off, be watching these, you can see a split on, split off, layer on, layer off. Be sure to be watching these little boxes at the bottom. So now, I'm going to use the layer button, but I'm not going to just turn it on like this where the layers turn on. I'm going to hold the button down until the display changes, and you can see octave shift upper 1. So that's octave shift upper 1. That's my first layered tone. I push layer button again, and now we go to octave shift upper 2. That's the second layered tone. So, and then I push it again, and now we got lower octave shift, and that is my left split. And as you can see, I have a +2 in there. That means I took my split and I raised the octave in my left hand 2 octaves. That was so I could play the split at a normal, because the split's way low on the keyboard. By bringing the octave up, I get to play it at a more normal octave. So let's show you what that happens. I'm going to take this split and use the yes/no buttons, or minus plus, and there's a +1 and now 0. Now I've returned the split back to a normal octave, and here it is. I'm going to turn off the accompaniment so you can hear just the left hand. As you can see, that was just too low. So there's upper 1, upper 2, lower. There's 1 octave, there's 2 octaves. And that's what made the left hand so playable in that rhythm, because it was turned up 2 octaves. Okay, so now we've selected our tone, we selected our rhythm, we selected a layer, we selected a split point, we selected a split voice, and we raised the split voice octave by 2 octaves. So that's what we got so far. Now the next thing we added was a harmonize to the right hand. I'm going to turn the split off. So here's just a clarinet. We added a harmonize to that. So when I play a chord into my right hand, and accompaniment has to be on for that, so you can see accompaniment being turned on. Now I got that 4-part harmony in my right hand. There's without a chord. If I play a chord, and there's that 4-part harmony. And that was done with the button just to the left of the split called the auto harmonize and arpeggiator. And it, as you can see, when I turn it on and off, you don't see anything on the screen, but if you look very carefully, you'll see a little dark rectangle going on and off, and next to the rectangle, printed on the actual plastic around the screen, is AHAR, or auto harmonize. So that's telling you the auto harmonize is on, that little black box. But to actually select your harmonize, you're going to do another, you're going to push the button and hold it down until the screen displays. And there you see the screen display, and you can see which one I picked. It says auto harmonize, harmonize type is 10. Now if I use my yes, no, plus minus, you can see I can change that to there's all kinds of choices. There's and I had chosen the four-way closed. And that's how I selected the auto harmonize. Now I'm going to hit the auto harmonize button again, and you'll see the display go back to normal, but you'll also see that the box is still there. So harmonize is still turned on until I hit the button again. So now that harmonize has been selected, when I hit the button just once, you'll see the rectangle come on. You have to hold the button down to actually select your harmonize, and then you just use the button as normal by just click and release to actually turn it on and off. And the same way with the split and the layer button. So underneath the layer buttons, you'll see written across the top is the layer, split, and harmonize arpeggiator, but underneath you can see that there's another function. Underneath the button it says octave under layer and type under auto harmonize. That means you hold the button down, you get a different display and a different function and a way to edit. Okay, and that's how I've got it set up so far, but the problem was there wasn't any reverb, or hardly any reverb in any of these. And as you hear, you can probably hear the reverb on there. There was a reverb turned on. So you have the basic function of the reverb, and that is the overall type of the reverb, and then you have the levels of the reverb. So first we have to pick out our overall type, and I did that by the function key, by holding down the function button, and this is what we explained in the other video. I'm holding the function button down and not releasing it, and I'm going over to the mixer button here and pressing that. So that means I get the F plus underneath the mixer button. There's an F plus, and that's the function plus the button. And as you can see, it comes up as effect, and the first thing it says is reverb. Now if I use my navigation buttons, you can see the bullet goes from one to the next, and now it's scrolling down the screen. These are all the options under this F effect. So by holding down the function key and pressing the mixer button, I got into this effect. So we're only going to deal with this first one because I don't want to get too deep into the other functions of this. I only want to deal with what we're working with today because this is such a complicated instrument. So we're only dealing with the reverb, and there's the choices. We have that's a Hall 2, and that's what I picked up. Now by using the yes, no, or the data wheel, you can change all the options. There it's off, room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, Hall 1, Hall 2, Hall 3, Hall 5, Stadium, Stadium 2, and that's the longest reverb. I'm sure you can probably hear that on the camera recorder. That's the longest reverb. That's the biggest one they have. And I picked out a Hall 2 for my reverb. Now the reverb works in two parts. One is you're picking out the type, what you're doing here, and now we have to set a level. So now I need to get out of this effect. Now how do I do that? I come back over to my navigation buttons, and you have the 4 arrows, but you also have exit and enter. So I'm using my exit button to get out of. I'm using one press to get out. Now the deeper in the menus you go, you have to press the exit more and more to get back to our main menu. And this is the view of our main menu, or the top level of the menu. So we've gotten out of the function, or F plus effect. Now I'm going to just push the mixer button all by itself. Just pressing that once. And as you can see, it comes up as the mixer. Now the mixer is a very complicated part of this instrument, and we're going to go through just a few sections of it today, but the most confusing part is the navigation. And again, we're going back to our navigation arrows over here on the right. which I explained in the other videos, Casio 1 and 2 tutorials. These are the navigation buttons around the exit and enter buttons underneath the tone section. So as I use the up-down arrows, you can see it changes from reverb send, the bullet, the fat bullet, changes to the DSP line off. And we're getting these through the up-down arrows. Now the right-left arrows will move from page to page. So I'm going to push the left arrow, and now I've moved to the mixer part master. I'm going to push it again. I've moved to mixer part DSP, or digital signal processing. I'm going to push the left arrow again, and now we're on the external mixer. The external mixer is when you plug in a microphone or a guitar or some kind of instrument into the input. You can control the mixer settings there. I'm going to have a special video just on setting up the external effects. We're not going to do that today. But I wanted to show you how the right-left arrows move you between the different mixers. And there's 4 different mixers in here. Let's do it again. Now I'm pressing my left arrow, and that's as far as it'll go. So with my left arrow, it's done, and it's on this mixer external. Now I'm going to the right arrow. I'm going to click it once, and now we're on the second part of the mixer, the DSP. I'm going to click it again. We're on the third part of the mixer. That's the master, and that's all that is volume and pan. Not much to that one at all. And then I'm going to press it again to the fourth part of the mixer, and this is what controls everything. Right now it's on reverb send. Like I said, there was 2 parts to the reverb. There's reverb. We picked our reverb out with the Hall 2, and now we picked the reverb send levels. And now we have to know this mixer part. You can see there's 16 numbers on here. I'm going to press the start stop on the rhythm. Okay. I'm going to exit. I'm going to start the rhythm, and you can see number 10, that's the drums. Now as soon as I hit a chord and get the accompaniment, you're going to see the rest of the accompaniment show up here. So each one of these bars, each one of those bars is indicating an instrument playing. So we went over this a little bit in the first 2 tutorials. So I'm going back to our clarinet, and you can see how clarinet is on channel 1. When I turn on the layer, there's the layer. Now you see channel 1 and 2 because channel 2 is playing that second instrument, the layer. Now when I turn on the split, you see channel 3 because that's the split. Each channel has its own, and even the auto harmonize has its own, and that's number 4. Let's turn that one on. Black dot. And that's number 4. I'm going to turn split, layers off. I'm going back, turning the mixer back on again. So, now that we know what these are, channel 1 is my clarinet. It's my main voice. So as I turn up 1, and you'll see there's a little arrow underneath 1. That is, again, the navigation arrows. As you go left, right, it goes under the different instrument. So there's 1. There's the maximum reverb. Now when I go to 2, I'm going to get my layer. And as I turn that up, we get reverb for that. When I go to 3, it'll be the auto harmonize. You're not hearing a harmonize, you're just hearing the instrument they used to put 4 of those in harmony. So we're just selecting reverbs now. Now, all these settings, if you switch away from this at all after you make these settings, you're going to lose them. So now we need to go to the registration banks. That's something new. The registration banks are what saves all these settings. So I'm going to turn the mixer off by hitting mixer, and that brings us up to the top page. And as I go down here, we're now into this is the registration area. So to save that, I've been working on this number 3. You hold down the store button and you hit number 3, and you'll see the screen go through a save function, and then it'll go back to normal. Every time you make a change in the mixer, you want to go back down here and save it. So let's do a save here. And that's all it was. That's all it takes to make the save. So now we've saved those mixer functions, or mixer levels. Those were the reverb levels. Now as I use the up-down level arrows, we're going to go through this mixer section. I'm going to go to the top page of the mixer section, which is the tone. It's showing trumpet, trombone. It's showing part, and that's part 3 because of the little arrow underneath that number 3. Right, left arrows change the part. So I've just changed it. There's 1, 2, 3. You have to have the part selected to do the particular edit you're doing. So on this top page of the mixer, we're going part. The next is a volume, and now you'll see there's the volume for my bass voice, the clarinet. So as I change my data dial, you can see the bars moving as I change the data dial. And that's how I'm selecting all the different levels of a main voice, number 2, the layered voice, number 3, the split voice, number 4, you can see the little arrow underneath the 4 moving when I move my navigation arrows. Number 4 is the auto harmonize. And I've gone through and I've set up all these levels to my own taste, because a lot of times the accompaniment will be much louder than you want or much softer. So right now in the function I have accompaniment turned all the way up, and I'm not touching that. I'm selecting the mixer to individually change my instruments. Now, confusing part of this mixer is I'm going to get out of the mixer. I'm going to turn the rhythm on, start, stop. And now you can see the rhythm running here. Now when I turn the mixer on, those channels, these here, control the amount of volume in these channels. But Casio does not allow you to change the volumes and save them to a registration. You have to go in and actually edit the style to change those volume levels, and then save it as a user style, and then you can do it. And that is one of the most confusing parts of this mixer, is you set levels for your I'm going to turn the mixer back on. We've set levels for our harmonize, our left hand, our layer, and our clarinet, our main voice. 1, 2, 3, 4. We set all those levels differently, and I balanced those out. It takes a little bit of time to set the volumes and then to try them out, because you have to get out of the mixer function. You have to return to your page. I'm getting out of the mixer function. You have to return to this top level page to try out your mixer settings. Because when you're in the mixer function, it will isolate only the channel. So you can't have everything playing together to check it. And that's one of the main disadvantages of this mixer. This mixer acts in a solo mode only. If you know mixers, then you'll know what a solo mode is. If you don't know mixers, then you'll find that this mixer is a little frustrating because it's not a real mixer where you can edit the amount of levels that you want while it plays. So I had to guess which level I wanted my each one at, and then get out of the mixer function and then actually turn it on and try the whole thing. And if that clarinet was too loud, I would go back to my mixer, put it on number 1, and turn it down. Get out of mixer, and then try it again. So, back into the mixer, we've done part is either on or off. That means you can actually turn one off. I'm not sure why you'd want to turn one off, but you can turn it off and play just the layered one, but I'm not sure why that makes much sense. You're more likely to turn other parts off. Then we set volume. You can see the volume there. And now the next part is I set a pan. That means left, right. As you can see, here we are, the little triangles under number 1, so we're on the clarinet. And I had panned that to the left a little bit. And then I panned, now I'm going to use my navigation arrows, go to the number 2, which is our layered sound. You can see that's panned in the other direction. Okay? Right, left. So I panned one right and one left, so when they play together it's more of a stereo image instead of a mono image of them both on top. And you can pan any of these, any of your instruments. Like I said though, when it comes to the rhythm tracks, it gets confusing because even though the mixer settings are there and you can make them, you can't save them in a bank. And that's where the massive confusion of this mixer comes in. Okay. And there's other functions within the mixer we're not going to go through because I don't want to confuse everybody and get too deep into here. So we've used the reverb send right here, and we've used the volume and the pan. We use the 3 parts of this mixer to set this up. And then you can use the exit button or hit the mixer button again to get out of the mixer. So the biggest part of the mixer function is using the right left arrows to get to the proper part of the mixer. We got 4 mixers in one mixer. We got mixer 1, which is external, mixer 2, which is DSP, mixer 3, which is a master, and then mixer 4 is the one we've been dealing with here. And then I use the up-down arrows to navigate through all the parts. All the sub-menus in there. And most of the time you'll be dealing with mostly the volume and the effects. And that's what we did today. And that's how I set up this fairly complicated setup without using any edits. And it gets more complicated first when you set up edits, where you actually edit your rhythm and you edit your tones, and then you place those in there. And in the next Casio tutorial, we will be editing tones, and then in the next one we'll be editing rhythms. Well, this was very complicated, so you may have to watch it several times to know what's going on. But thanks for listening, and see you in the next Casio tutorial.